Side 3 is a very unique part of this album, possibly the most notable part of this album, and may well be the centerpiece of it as well, the Concerto for a Rainy Day. You see, the inspiration behind the album, and this four-part concerto tweet in particular, came from Jeff Lynne himself hiding out in a rented chalet in the Swiss Alps, when and where it was dark and raining for a few weeks, and he was struggling through it just through a bit of writer's block. Then suddenly, the storm passed one day and it all cleared, and the sun shone through it all. And it was that moment, that feeling, that would inspire Jeff to not only write this suite, but the whole album as a whole. It came out of the blue for him. The concerto and its individual parts represent certain emotional stages one may go through, the stages of weather, and the feelings and ideas they may represent. And this is set up perfectly with the first song, Standing in the Rain, which begins with the sound of pouring torrential raining, real rain mind you, having been recorded outside of a studio in Munich, as a lonely keyboard plays a calm yet almost haunting melody. I think we could even also hear what sound like a dog or wolf howling. This beginning alone is pouring with atmosphere. Pun may or may not be intended. Then we're greeted by a sudden boom of music, like a strike of lightning and thunder, as we hear a distorted, crackling voice saying the title of Concerto for a Rainy Day. Setting the tone of the song alone, we get some intense and emotional music. The guitars, the drums, the synthesizers, the violin strings, the choir, it all comes together so vividly. Then over 2 minutes in, Jeff finally begins singing proper about how one may feel while out and lost in the middle of rain, waiting all alone, getting soaked and wet, and wishing that the people around rushing by could hear his song. Although with weather like this, I don't think they even have the time to even listen, or even look at you. It's teeming down on him, cats and dogs. I guess he wasn't a big fan of that movie. Or the sequels, for that matter. Jeff seems to openly lay out and down his feelings of frustration when dealing with such harsh weather in simple and honest words. The good intentions and pain all lay drowned now in the pouring rain, as if any sense of hope, optimism, positivity had all been washed away to mere nothingness by the seemingly never-ending rain, to the point that all the irritation and pain had been completely numbed out as well. The song itself then closes with a sudden change of key and melody, as that trademark vocoded voice sings, "Big wheels keep turning, they turn forever and ever," which leads us right into the next and second part. And that second part being Big Wheels, a much more solemn and slower ballad where musically, lyrically, and emotionally things are at the lowest. A piano-sounding instrument plays as Jeff sings more calmly and with a hint of grief and despair about big wheels turning, likely referring to the monotonousness and repetition of life, just going on to no end or change of pace in sight. How lonely and apart we may feel from each other and inside. Then with the bridges and choruses, things lift up at least a little bit, as Jeff's vocals and the music itself raise themselves with a sense of yearning and reaching out for some ray of hope from somewhere among the cloudy skies, remembering the dead of night and a lonely light shining upon the window, and how he sees it all so clear. Light in the window? Is he about to be abducted by visitors? In one of the verses, Jeff goes on about having to start again, and looking around but never seeming to find out whatever's rolling through his mind. This could likely be about Jeff himself suffering through writer's block while stuck indoors in an isolated chalet in the middle of a mountainous range because of constant heavy teeming rain outside. And as a result, feeling low and depressed, as if barely anything or even nothing is really being accomplished at all. I guess I and other people are welcome to the club too when it comes to writing fanfiction. Weather can really affect our moods and emotions quite so easily, and we may usually underestimate or take it for granted. And this song alone makes that quite clear. Then the mood starts to shift for the better with the third part, Summer and Lightning, where the sounds of rain and thunder are drowned off by a bright and jangly guitar riff before Jeff sings with a slightly happier mood about waiting for so long, for your love, and how it's no good how you're treating him so wrong. The song soon builds a bit with its pre-chorus bridge before here it comes again in the chorus itself. It's all around our narrator, and it must be magic. I guess you can say it's strange magic? This song in particular seems to be about feeling hopeful and despair at the same time. Love reciprocated or unreciprocated. Summer representing the positive feelings and lightning representing the negative feelings. And Jeff the narrator is having such both conflicting thoughts and feelings at once in the same time. And his newfound hopes are just starting to brighten his day, at least a little at a time. At one point, the strings pause for a bit to give way for a mostly instrumental break where the drums and keyboards just start to play in a very jovial manner, all bouncy and cheery, before the aforementioned strings themselves join in on the fun as well even. Soon before we return to yet another chorus this time, the backing vocals singing the song title of Summer and Lightning, becoming more prevalent and noticeable before the song soon fades away once more into the rain sounds. This is another underrated ELO song in my opinion, and I think it deserves just as much attention as the very next track. Side 3 and the concerto as a whole ends with its fourth part and, without shadows of a doubt, the most well-known song, not just in this album, but in all of ELO, Mr. Blue Sky. This is what I may like to call rhapsodic rock, and it has quite a way of transitioning over as well. Beginning with a little funny radio voice reporting the forecast of clear blue skies just before the piano plays that instantly recognizable opening 4x4 beat. In the lyrics, Jeff sings about, what else? The sun shining in the sky and no clouds in sight. And right after he sings It's a Beautiful New Day, we hear a little brief clanging sound that follows the 4x4 rhythm. That was actually produced by drummer Bev Bevan striking the side of a fire extinguisher with a drumstick. Yes, really, look it up. The use of sound design doesn't stop there, however, as when Jeff sings Running Down the Avenue, we hear some faint panting sound as well. It's still very fitting nonetheless. In the chorus, Jeff sings to Mr. Blue Sky himself, asking him why he had to hide away for so long and where did we go wrong. What Jeff doesn't know, however, is that Mr. Blue Sky was mad that he didn't pay him back the £10 he owes. And soon after the very first chorus, we're greeted with a very brilliant guitar solo, and a somewhat unique one as well, since usually in songs, guitar solos would occur after a middle-late section near the end of the song. But this whole song does play a bit around with structure, as we might see. And speaking of middle-eights, in the midpoint of this track, we get what might be considered a vocoder solo, no doubt by keyboardist Richard Tandy, singing the song title 3 times in a row. But soon comes one last verse, where Jeff mentions Mr. Knight creeping over with his hand on your shoulder, which totally doesn't sound remotely creepy at all, does it? Then one last chorus before we get a very emotional choir section. Like with Rock Aria from a New World Record, this might be a literal rock opera. And just when you think things are just ending right then and there, we suddenly get what may be considered a finale of sorts, a culmination of all that has come before across this concerto, a mix of both rock instruments and that operatic choir before the song and the whole concerto ends with a brief, beautiful, bittersweet, and tear-jerking reprise of Big Wheels. And finally, it goes out on a long, resolving, and conclusive chord, almost similar to the ending of A Day in the Life by the Beatles, which may be intentional since a lot of people have compared this song and the band as a whole to the Beatles. And in a way, they're kind of right. This song is pretty much a big demonstration of the Beatles' influence on ELO, as well as being influenced from other songs like I Am the Walrus. And in a way, they're right. John Lennon was right. ELO really are the sons of the Beatles. They really did continue where the Beatles left off. And to send us off, we get a little recorded message that many people have thought said Mr. Blue Sky with an extra syllable, but in actual fact it's saying, please turn me over, as if to flip over the vinyl record to the other side. And he said it with a pretty please, so at least he's polite there and has manners. Although, if that was the case, wouldn't Across the Border from side 1 also have to end with a similar message? But anyways, the overall song of Mr. Blue Sky is already good enough on its own, but in my opinion, it's when this is with the previous 3 songs and their context that makes this all the more impactful and powerful. The whole concerto are among the closest instances ELO have ever gotten to progressive rock, at least ever since their very early years of the first album ELO 2 and On the Third Day, the last of which I'll probably try to cover next year. And it's up there and on par with the likes of Pink Floyd's Shine On You Crazy Diamond and Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody. If you want a bit more in-depth analysis of Mr. Blue Sky in particular, I recommend the videos by Rooben and Polyphonic, which I'll link to in the description. So whether you've listened to Mr. Blue Sky or not, I seriously recommend listening to the whole suite. It's a ride of emotion and music. It's that satisfying.